Hello and welcome to the Blueprint Roundtable. I'm your host today, Chrissy Manzano, and I have Emily Bell and Matt Loers with me. And today's topic is kind of centered around the economy and things going on, and brings a question that we hear a lot from our candidates of, should I lower my comp expectations in a challenging economic market? So Emily, I know this is something that you brought up, but curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So overall, I think it's important for candidates to consider very carefully if they are willing to accept a lower than their current kind of comp expectations. The reason being is that it could have financial implications, right? It could have long-term career implications. I think right now with last year being such a kind of record-setting uptick in comp based off of kind of what we were seeing. I think that the instinct right now with the slower economy is to right size that. But I think that employers and candidates should be weary to do that, or at least, pause because of the financial implications, the long-term career implications, and then also the fact that over the course of the last year and a half, 2 years, individuals have built livelihoods around their existing comp expectations. So I think that it's beyond just what someone thinks that they're worth. I mean, that's a very important factor in the overall equation, but you have to realize it's a balance, right? An employer has to be competitive with the market. If an employer is going to try to lead right sizing what they think is an overinflated market, they run the risk of not attracting top talent. And it's not as simple as top talent, wanting to find a job. A lot of people who were laid off were given severance packages. So they're not in a huge rush to shift to their next move, as they shouldn't be, right? They should be really careful in how they select their next company. So I think that employers really need to be mindful of just the overall perception of what they're willing to pay for top talent. It should be the very same as it was this time last year. It's more important than ever to make sure that you're paying people what they're worth to come in and do the job, because you want the top of the market talent, and those people are worth those wages. And I think on the flip side, from the candidate perspective, know your worth. Outside of building a livelihood around what you were making, making sure that you're strategically aligning and balancing, right? You don't want to over index on a base that's like maybe 5-10K off from your current when your OTE could round out, right? Like that's kind of, within range. But if it's like 20-30K off and you know that it's not fair for what is the current rate in the market, I think it's something to consider, So my short answer to a very long-winded initial review would be no. I don't think that people should lower their expectations. I think that it drives more than just individual financial security. It will redrive and kickstart the economy so long as we all still have this income to keep funneling back into it.
Yeah,
Matt, curious what your thoughts are.
yeah, I agree. Short answer, no. I don't think candidates should be reducing their comp expectations. I align with your assessment on we're not going to see comp continue to creep up as quickly as we did the last couple of years. I think what we're seeing
Yeah.
is ranges are narrowing a little bit, where it used to be maybe 180 to 240
Yeah.
for a low end enterprise AE role. It's probably closer to 180 to 210, right? So they're bringing those in slightly from what we're seeing. And then the other thing is, I think there's a lot of organizations that are much more inclined today to stick to their budget, which means you're not going to be able to negotiate or hassle your comp up higher than what is advertised or what's offered, even if your offer is on the low end of a range that was advertised. Where in the past it was, well, hey, you're offering 200, I'll move for 220, and they say, yeah, sure, if it's the guy or the gal, let's bring them in, let's go. Now, many clients and many organizations out there are saying, no, the high end is all that we can afford from a budget standpoint. If we go over here, it's really going to reduce from something else. So we're seeing
Sure.
we're seeing less fluctuation there to go over ranges. I, that doesn't change the fact that candidates should also be considering the holistic comp package. What we have not seen, at least from our limited scope, right, is we're not seeing clients reduce the equity offering. We're not seeing clients pare back their health benefits or unroll 401k matches. All of those things, for the most part, seem to be in place and remain consistent. So it's always important to take those into consideration when you're looking at comp. You may be a little disappointed by some OTE here, but if you're even looking at the job, there's got to be a reason why. You must be interested, right? So just go with the expectation that whatever is told to you or advertised is where you would likely end up and can't lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
I
thing
mean,
I'll add to that just before, and I'll kick it to you, Chrissy, I'm curious to get your thoughts, would be outside of, what we've touched on currently, it does potentially open up, perpetuating wage gaps, right? So I think the individuals that are impacted by it the most would be those that are typically impacted naturally by the existing wage disparity that is in current circulation within the market. So I think it's just being extremely cognizant of that as an individual, especially if you kind of fall within that category of, definitely looking at it from a long-term play perspective of not wanting to perpetuate kind of that underlying challenge that's present in the market, whether it's a up or down economy. Chrissy, what do you think?
Yeah. So I agree for the most part, and maybe my area that's different isn't necessarily where I disagree, but maybe a different point of view. So I think that as for business in general as a whole, regardless of industry, whether you're in consulting or tech or whatever, right? There is an element to where your comp expectations shouldn't necessarily change because of the market. Because one, companies are still hiring.
Yeah.
We know this, just being so, not necessarily from our clients, but just from being so involved in the recruiting side and working with other recruiting firms and having these conversations where a lot of companies that have done layoffs are also still hiring. It's just not as obvious, right? And so the layoff doesn't mean that all of a sudden, now they just can only afford, pennies and they were paying dollars. So it's a different, way to kind of look at that, right? But when it comes to SaaS, in the SaaS industry in particular, things are changing. And I think for the better, but it was an industry fueled by millions and billions of dollars of cash that was just spent irresponsibly. And so in 2022, and even in 2021, we never saw this because I think we encourage our clients not to do this, but you saw these stories like I saw an AE who got $100K over ask, right? And that's an example of just really irresponsible spend, right? And so I think if candidates experience that and they have that, I would say your expectations are out of line because that was never realistic to begin with. That's awesome that you got that, but that's not that's great if you got a $500,000 salary as an AE. That's not realistic anymore. And it wasn't realistic before. It just was, during a heightened time. So making sure that you're going into what the market really is, fairly before that peak and after that peak. And I think SaaS is going to stop spending that way. That I think we've all kind of grown up in. There's still a lot of money to be had. But I think folks that are in the SaaS industry in particular, it just pays so much more than a lot of industries, right? Because of the VC money that was in it, in backing. So I think that's an element that will change a little bit where they're being more stringent on how they hire and what they pay for those hires. And that's a good thing for responsible growth, but responsible growth is actually not just a saying anymore. It's something that's being accounted for now. And then I think on the company side, kind of going into that outside of just the candidate, they have, if you are creating comp that because you think you have the upper hand, you're just making that more difficult. It should always be aligned to what the market is in great economic situations and bad. And I think we saw that where, no one when we were working with clients ever had to go above market average because of the whole package. To your point, Lors, right? Comp is one data point. It shouldn't be the only data point. There's a lot of different things that can affect your financial income and your longevity at a company, right? And getting a huge salary and only being able to be there for 6 months and then having to start over somewhere else could put you further in the hole than if you went somewhere that had that fair equal salary and going through that. So that was just kind of a little bit of a different take in the sense of just kind of where the industries are changing. But I do think that companies need to be mindful that it's still really hard to hire. Like the labor market is still strong, which I think is where it's so confusing for a lot of companies in this time of I'm seeing all these layoffs. I'm hearing and feeling like the economy isn't great with inflation, but why is it so hard to hire? Which, we just talked about in another roundtable, right? And can go on for maybe another topic. But anyways, that's my take on it. So.
No, it's good. I mean, I think that my biggest thing is, and it's not always the strategy, right? It's not every company, but there are those out there, right, that are using this as an opportunity to get top talent for a discount, really. And that I think is the wrong way to look at it, right? Like if you really did have overinflated comp bands, strategically makes sense to mitigate that capital spend when you don't need to, right? Like why throw the cash out the door? But if it was already fair and it's already competitive, even if it was increased, I would encourage companies to maintain that line, hold that line. Candidates hold that expectation. The economy will recover. And it will recover quicker when you have more working professionals that are able to spend that livable wage within the market. So high level, even outside of tech, I think it's really important for people to just kind of hold the existing standard and kind of wait for the storm to pass.
I totally agree. It was short-sighted in 2022 to overpay, and it's short-sighted in 2023 to underpay.
That's
be
true.
Short-sighted. Be strategic.
Very well put.
All right, you all. That's all the time we have today. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye, guys.